everyone, welcome to Six String Supplies and our latest guitar wiring video. Just before we dive in, everything you see on the sofa there is a load of pre-wired harnesses. We've got a guitar show next Sunday, so it's just over a week away, and there's quite a few more to do. The idea is we're going to take 2 of each model, showcase them at the guitar show, and hopefully sell them, which would be fantastic. So basically, tonight I'm going to wire an SG harness, 50 style, using braided wire, paper and oil capacitors, Switchcraft right angle toggle, jack, and CTS pots. So we're going to load it up into template, show you how that's wired, and then add it to the collection down there. So I'll just give you a quick overview of the components, and we'll delve in and get wiring, shall we? Right, so these are the components that I'm going to use to wire the SG harness. Just to show you quickly what we've got 500k audio pots. These are CTS. They've got a nice smooth action. I personally don't like pots that are really loose, but then again you don't want them stiff, obviously. So for those, we have a Switchcraft right angle toggle switch, which is wired up the same way as their other switch, the long frame or the short frame. It's just at a right angle, obviously, for compact and shallow control cavities. Is it one of those? One of the key elements of this actually is the deep threaded nut, which you normally have to buy separately. But if you were to buy our SG wiring kit on the website, for example, or the Les Paul wiring kit, you get the deep threaded nut included. We like to take care of you where we can. I've got a Switchcraft jack. Now this is actually the slightly longer thread. It's got an extra 3, I think it's an extra 3mm, which just helps you get it through thicker top bodies. Or you'll find these typically on SGs and Les Paul Juniors. Actually very useful on a Telecaster as well. We've got some braided wire. Pretty standard. It's 2 wires in one, so the outer braid is the ground, and underneath the braid you've got the cloth wire, which is the hot. We've also got a couple of foot of standard black pushback cloth wire, and we've got some paper and oil capacitors. I think they're new old stock. Well, they have to be, they're Sprague. But they've measured out on the capacitance meter at bang on 0.022 UF, so I'm pretty happy with that. Personally, I tend to use orange drops in all my own guitars, but most customers in the market, everyone seems to go mad for paper and oil, so that's what we offer. Alright, so we'll load these components into the template and we'll take it from there. So I've loaded the components into the template and I've turned it at an angle here, so it basically looks like the inside of an SG control cavity. So that's obviously your toggle switch, neck volume, neck tone, bridge volume, bridge tone, and the jack. So obviously feel free to label them if you need to. I'm not going to bother because it is going to be a harness going out to a customer. So I'll label the template rather than the pots themselves. Right, so the first thing we're going to do, as always, is a bit of tinning. Now it's very similar, it's almost identical in fact to the Les Paul 50 style wiring video we did, in the sense that you tin all the lugs and the jack as well that are going to be used. So we'll go ahead and do that. So that's this lug on the volume pots. We'll call it lug 3, the top one. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. At the middle lugs on the tone pots. Now these 4 are going to be grounded. These 2 are going to be for the toggle switch and the pickups, so we'll give them a very light tinning now. And the capacitor, obviously. This one's going to be redundant, so you can either snip it off or just leave it as it is. So when you're tinning lugs like this, put the soldering tip behind it, and then from the other side, because obviously the heat will pass through quite quickly, just dabble in a circular motion a little bit of solder. And because the eyelet is completely very hot, it will just run round quite nicely. A little bit on the jack. Same again, put the tip behind the eyelet and just feed on some solder from the other side. Okay, now I'm not going to tin the toggle switch, only because it's a Switchcraft toggle and they come pre-tinned straight from the factory. If you're doing it on a non-Switchcraft or generic switch that you might have got off eBay or Chinese made, for example, you might have to tin them. I can't really comment at the moment because I don't have any in front of me. And also, while we're here, we're going to ground these 4 lugs that are not going to be used. So that's the top lugs here from a bird's eye point of view on both the volume pots, and the middle lugs from the tone pots. So you can either use a bit of wire and solder it to the back, or out of habit I like to bend it onto the back of the pot and solder it down there, build a little bridge between the two. Now on the middle ones, you want to be careful. On the middle lugs here, you want to be careful that you don't get solder on the inside of the pot. So when you bend it back at an angle. Just like that. Right, so moving on to the ground wire. Typically, particularly in Les Paul, you'll see a continuous wire or wires connecting the 4 pots together. That would normally come from the ground lug of the toggle switch. It will connect the 4 pots and then go to the ground on the jack. And obviously you get connected to the bridge ground wire, which will normally come to the bridge up here. And you do it that way, but what we're doing today is a slightly more unconventional, probably a bit more traditional way of doing it, is using the braided wire. I'm going to have a continuous wire, just one wire running from my toggle switch, grounding the 4 pots and to the jack. So I'm just going to show you how you do that. The first thing we're going to do, obviously, is just tin the side of the pots. So we'll put a little bit in here. Right, so that's done. You can see that I put a blob of solder on each, on the insides of the pots there. And it also actually, it's kind of on the corner of the pot, so it's on the side and it also goes on top. And that's because we're going to be soldering the outer braid to the sides of the pot, but you want to have a bit of solder on the top of the pot so that it can make a bridge between the two as well. So next thing we're going to do is start the ground at the toggle switch. So to do that, remove your toggle. And you need to use a naked bit of wire, so you can either use 3 centimeters from the cloth wire, having removed the cloth, or in this case I've got some tinned copper here, which I'm going to use. And I'll thread that through the ground lug of the toggle switch. So the ground one is the fat lug here. That's the ground. Either side we've got the inputs to the volume controls, and underneath you've got the output to the jack. So we're going to thread this bit of tinned copper through the ground lug. We're going to twist it round, and we're going to solder that into place. Like so. And then we're going to connect the output to the jack lugs. So take your cloth wire, push the braid back, access the wire underneath, which is the hot or the live wire, push that cloth back, and it's this wire under the cloth that you want to solder to the output lugs of the toggle switch. Now you actually need to bend these two together slightly, and I've taken some pliers and squeezed them together, because you need to put the wire through both lugs. Just twist that and we'll solder that into place. Okay, so with that done, you can push your cloth back down, push the braid back down. What I like to do, if you've got any of the heat shrink tubing, it does come with our wiring kit, you can just cover these lugs with the tubing. It just makes everything a bit more protected. Right, there you go. So push the braid back down as far as it will go. And this is similar to wiring a Les Paul toggle switch in the recent video we've done. You want to bend this ground wire, the bent naked one, twist it around the outer braid of this wire. I might as well use it all up. There should be enough left for a couple of turns. And solder that in place. There we go. So that means that this outer braid is now the ground, and we can connect that to the rest of the pots there. So we'll just do that now. So now it's time to solder the outer braid of the wire here that we just laid down to the respective ground points, the puddles of solder that we put on earlier. And your two best friends in this process are going to be rubber tubing. Because, I mean, even though it's unlikely, given how cramped it is anyway, you do not want the outer braid of that coming into contact with, particularly this lug here. This lug. But basically, you don't want it coming into contact with any potential live connection, because it will cause a few problems. And your second best friend, good old-fashioned masking tape. So we'll dive in there. What we're going to do is we're going to tin the outer braid of the wire just a little bit. Beautiful. And then you need to use your masking tape. It's a bit of a fiddly process, to be honest, but you need to use your masking tape just to hold everything tight, because you want that wire needs to be right up against the pot when you're making the connection. If it jumps around, it's not ideal. So then the same process as before. Heat the joint and feed in some solder, and then that will create a bridge between the two. Let it cool naturally. And there you go. So you just have to repeat that process for the remaining 3 pots. So we'll bend it round. Now this is where your heat shrink tubing comes in handy. Just want to cover it a little bit. I don't want the outer braid touching anything else. It doesn't matter if the outer braid touches the outer braid as you're bending it round. Oh, do you know what? I'll get rid of that. That's just in the way. Same again. Just lightly put a little bit of solder on the wire. Spread it around. Like so. And then here I will actually put some rubber tubing in because it's going through the middle of the cavity. I don't really want anything touching anything else. So feed it through. Apply your heat with the lighter or soldering heat gun even. And we'll do the same process here. Tin the wire a bit. Just going to tape that round the back just to keep it secure. Beautiful. and bend it back round to the final point that you soldered earlier. This is the bridge tone pot again, tin the wire. That's actually wedged in quite nicely, so shouldn't need any masking tape. Heat the joint, feed in your solder, spread it around so you get a nice bridge between the wire and the pot. So there you go. That's how that's how we, with our harnesses, ground an SG harness, using a single length of braided wire, which goes all the way from the jack, from the toggle switch, grounds each pot, and then we'll connect it to the jack. So moving on to the jack, now I'm afraid to say I've actually done a little bit of this off camera, the reason being it's a fairly long, fiddly, frustrating process, so I didn't really want to bore you with that, but I will show you what I've done anyway. So first off, pretty typically I put in some rubber tubing here, the final length between the final pot and the ground of the jack, just a little bit more protection. And I've also, as you can probably see, I've removed the braid from this section of the wire. Now I'll show you how I've done that. You can do it two ways. You can either unbraid it literally from the top and working all the way down, or you can ply open some of the braids and poke the inner black cloth wire through that way. But either way, whichever way you do it, the idea being is you then twist all the braids to one side, twist them all together, clip it off, but you want to leave a couple of millimeters, like that. And this ledge here, this little ledge is what you put into the eyelet of the ground lug and the jack. It just makes it a lot easier to solder. We do get quite a few emails and phone calls from customers that are really struggling to get the outer braid to stick to their jack. By doing this, you can actually put the braid in the eyelet and solder it in place that way. It's just a lot more secure, a lot easier. So we'll just go ahead and ground that. Put that through. Oh, as you can see, I've also tinned it as well. And as we've tinned the lug earlier on, it will stick very quickly indeed. And in the same way that I build a bridge between the lugs that are grounding here, between the pot and the lug, I'm just going to build a bridge here between the lug and the wire. So I'm just going to dabble it on and drag it across like that. There you go. That's a nicely grounded braided wire. And the final step, again, you might get a bit frustrated with me by doing this, but a little bit of rubber tubing. It's literally 1 centimetre. Feed up the inner cloth wire before you solder it in place. And the final thing we do is solder the inner cloth wire to the other lug. Again, I've tinned this wire, and as we tinned this lug earlier on, it will be a nice, quick, simple process. There you go. Let it cool naturally. Then I'm going to put this tubing back down, just to cover that lug. Just like that. And then obviously apply your heat from the soldering iron or whatever. So there you go. And just to summarise what we've done, is to use one single wire running all the way from the jack, from the toggle switch, grounding all 4 pots and running to the jack. Now, as the outer braid is the ground and the inner cloth wire is the hot, that one wire also is the output to the jack as well. So final 2 steps are, we're going to connect the toggle switch to the volume pots, and we're going to add the capacitors. So the final step is connecting the toggle switch to the inputs of the volume pots, so the neck volume and the bridge volume, and of course we're going to add our capacitors running from, as this is a 50 style setup, the middle lug here in the volume pot to the lower lug here from a bird's eye point of view on the tone pot. So we're just going to start off by tinning some black cloth wire. It doesn't have to be black, you can use cream, yellow, orange. Let's give it a tin. Beautiful. Right, so I'm just going to put that in there. And we're going to do this lead of the capacitor at the same time. I do only like to solder once. There you go. So obviously you can snip off this little wire here using your wire cutters. I'll do that at the end. Now this wire, this is for the neck volume pot. So I'm going to thread this round and under here. Just like that. Probably shouldn't have used a black background now. But here is, it's running from the middle lug of the volume pot. I've wrapped it around underneath, and that's going to get soldered to the this input to volume lug here. And it's exactly the same process on the bridge volume. Middle lug, wrap it under, connect to that one. So I'll just do that quickly. Wrap it around. You don't have to do it this way, of course. You can't have it just going directly from there to there. That's what a lot of people do. That's what your wiring diagram is going to tell you to do. I think that's what our wiring diagram tells you to do. But it's just a lot easier if everything's tucked out the way. And same again with the capacitor, we're soldering that capacitor lead. Which again, you can snip off. Let it cool naturally, and we're also just gonna put these leads, solder the other lead of the capacitor to the lower lug of the respective tone pot. There we go. So that's the capacitors done. Now obviously all this yellow tubing does here is stops the leads from coming into contact with the back of the pot, which is the ground, as you know. It's going to lead you to a few issues. So I'm just going to solder this wire to this lug, the switch. Give it a tin as always. I know I harp on about it, but tinning the wires and the lugs before you actually make the connection, for me, is the most important thing I could possibly tell anyone about soldering. It's just got to be done. There we go, all finished. That's how to wire an SG50 style. That's how we wire our harnesses. So just to summarise there, you've obviously got your 4 pots, the caps, the jack, the toggle switch. The outer braid is the ground, so you can use that to ground the 4 pots together. Rubber tubing if you want it, I mean it's recommended, not essential, as long as you're confident. I'd definitely put it here, because you don't want the ground to come into contact with these lugs here. And there you go. So thanks for watching. Any comments, questions, critiques, just get in touch or leave a comment below.